Most people think the 1% is about money, about status, about some distant lifestyle they'll probably never touch, but that's not where it begins. It never was. The 1% starts much earlier, in moments nobody claps for, in decisions nobody sees, in a way of thinking that quietly separates while the world is busy comparing. Because the truth is, by the time the results show up, the separation already happened long ago. You don't wake up one day and become the 1%. You wake up one day and realize, you've been living differently for a long time. While others were waiting, you were building tolerance for discomfort, while others were negotiating with excuses. You were learning how to sit with resistance, without needing to escape it. That's the part nobody explains. They show the highlight, they skip the mindset, and that's why most people never cross the line. The 1% doesn't think they're special, they think they're responsible for their mornings, responsible for their attention, responsible for what they do when motivation disappears and no one is watching. That's the first quiet divide, because the 99% live from reaction, from emotion, from whatever today feels like. The 1% lives from intent. They don't ask, do I feel like it? They ask, what does this version of me do next? And then, even when it's boring, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's lonely, they move, not fast, not loud, but forward. Here's something most people won't admit: they don't fail because they're incapable, they fail because they're constantly negotiating with themselves. Just this once, just today, just until things feel better. The 1% doesn't negotiate with the future, they understand something early. Every small compromise teaches the mind a pattern, and patterns compound, so they become ruthless with the small things, not dramatic, not obsessive, just consistent. Because they know discipline isn't about intensity, it's about identity. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of what you tolerate. Pause, let that sit. The 1% tolerates very little from themselves, not in a hateful way, in a respectful one. They don't talk to themselves like enemies, they talk to themselves like leaders. They don't say, I can't. They say, not yet, keep going. And that shift, that subtle internal language, changes everything, because the mind is always listening. Most people train their mind to quit, the 1% trains it to stay when it's uncomfortable, to stay when progress is invisible, to stay when the reward is delayed. That's the real skill. Music low, steady. You see, the 1% understands time differently. They're not in a rush, but they're never idle. They don't need immediate proof. They trust the math of effort. There is an argument that happens inside every single person who ever wanted something that felt bigger than the present. It is not loud, it is not public, it doesn't need witnesses. It is a private war between two voices. One says, do this, keep going. The other says, wait, not today. The first voice is small and steady, it is the voice of discipline. The second is loud and persuasive, the voice of emotion. This is the battleground. This is where ordinary lives get redirected, quietly, without fireworks. People imagine discipline like a harsh master, a list of rules and punishments. They picture discipline as the thing that robs them of joy and spontaneity. They get it wrong. Discipline is a kind of generosity to the future version of yourself. It is the act of promising, in small ways, to the person you will become. Emotion never cares about promises. Emotion values the present moment, what feels easiest, what soothes fastest, what produces relief. So the fight is not against comfort. The fight is against short circuits, the small bypasses that reroute your attention away from what compounds. You will wake in the middle of a week and the voice of emotion will be reasonable. Sleep an hour more. Eat the thing you crave. Skip practice today, you'll make up for it later. It sounds caring. It sounds harmless, but these are the little concessions that teach your mind a pattern. Each concession shrinks your margin for boldness, because habits are teachers. They speak quietly, but they never stop. and the mind learns by example. If you meet resistance with retreat, your mind learns retreat. If you meet boredom with distraction, your mind learns distraction. If you meet pain with avoidance, your mind learns avoidance. That's why the question is not whether you feel like it, the question is who you are training your mind to be. People who live by emotion are not weak, they are trained by 1,000 small mercies that looked right in the moment. People who live by discipline are also trained by 1,000 small refusals that looked right later. The difference is not morality. It is fidelity to a future that cannot argue back. I want to tell you a truth that feels unfair at first. Discipline does not remove the feeling of resistance. It doesn't make the ache disappear. It only teaches a different relationship to it. You still feel tired. You still want the easy exit. You still face the internal language that asks for justification. But discipline reframes the conversation. Instead of asking, "Why do I feel this way?" it asks, "What do I do next?" Not because the feeling is trivialized, but because the feeling is temporary, while the decision is permanent. You will practice discipline in boring smallness long before it shows up on stages and headlines. You will do the mornings when no one is watching. You will choose the work that no one applauds. You will return to the practice when the reward has not yet appeared. This is what makes results look like miracles to outsiders. Outside, they see the trophy. Inside, there were 1,000 mornings. So how do we move from the trembling negotiation of emotion to the quiet fidelity of discipline? There is no shortcut. There is no single trick. There is language. There is structure. There is practice. Language matters because your inner voice is the CEO of your behavior. What you say to yourself shapes what you tolerate. When your inner critic whispers, "You're too tired," the sentence you answer with sets a precedent. If you answer with permission, "Okay, skip today," you teach your mind a pattern of permission. If you answer with a redirection, "I'm tired, but I do the smallest useful thing," the precedent is different. The mind learns to accept limits and still deliver. Discipline begins with redefining the acceptable. Most people never define what enough means, so they leave it governed by feeling. Discipline is architecture. It builds safe channels for action, rituals that move you even when mood fails. These rituals are not glamorous, they are boring, they are repeatable, they are mercilessly simple. It could be, write for 10 minutes, walk for 15, do one set, read 2 pages. You can do the bare minimum, indefinitely. The secret is that the bare minimum, when met every day, becomes extraordinary. The first step is to give your day structure that doesn't require ardor, it requires attendance. That means you show up even when the inner weather is stormy. Attendance is more powerful than motivation. Because motivation is fickle, attendance is steady. But structure without tenderness becomes cruelty. Discipline without compassion becomes a sword that cuts both ways. It breaks the spirit if wielded without wisdom. We must understand the distinction between discipline and punishment. Punishment asks, "How hard can you be on yourself?" Discipline asks, "How true are you to your future?" Punishment seeks to shame. Discipline chooses to keep a promise. This is the heart of the internal confrontation. Emotion will offer you 1,000 reasons to stop that sound like mercy. Discipline will offer a single firm answer that sounds like love. Not the easy kind but the honest kind. You will love yourself enough to be consistent. There is another layer people miss. Emotion is not merely a villain. Emotion is also information. It tells you what matters. It tells you where your thresholds lie. It tells you what you have neglected. You must listen without obeying. When emotion surfaces, be curious. Why now? What is the pattern? Is this fatigue that needs recovery, or is it boredom disguised as fatigue? Is this avoidance or a legitimate boundary? Discipline needs calibration. It needs wisdom. If you never rest, you burn. If you never adjust, you fracture. So part of training the 1% mind is learning the difference between a justified pause and a pattern of concession. That difference is measured over time. A single skipped session is not failure. 1,000 small concessions are. This is where honesty becomes your ally. Hold a ledger of patterns, not to punish, but to see. When you begin to notice that your just for today reasons always come on Wednesdays, or Fridays, or after a certain type of email, you can act on the pattern. You are no longer at the mercy of feeling, you become a scientist of your own behavior. You test small interventions, you change the environment, you rewrite the question, and slowly, quietly, the mind updates. Now the mechanics, not the romance. Practice the small rule. When emotion rises, perform the smallest useful action toward your aim. If your aim is to write a chapter and resistance hits, write one paragraph. If your aim is fitness and resistance peaks, move for 3 minutes. Do that over weeks. Watch how the muscle grows. This is not heroism, this is habit. There is elegance in the smallest action. It keeps the machine oiled. Pause. Music swells slightly. Let me tell you about patience. Discipline is patient in ways emotion is not. Emotion wants a result now because it equates satisfaction with quick returns. Discipline understands latency, the time between seed and tree. You plant many seeds, you water some, you do the mundane work, and you don't measure daily returns. That kind of patience is learned only by living through seasons. You will hold your breath through months when output feels invisible. You will learn to trust the invisible arithmetic of compounding. That trust is not blind, it is empirical. You have evidence. Every time you did the small thing for long enough, something grew. You have proof the world is patient with the persistent. Emotion can be seduced by novelty and immediacy. Discipline is drawn to the cumulative. Breathe, more intimate. Now, the social dimension. It's easy to pretend this battle is solo. It is not. You operate inside networks. You are constantly inhaling the expectations and comforts of those around you. Emotion loves empathy in the form of comfort and exculpation. It whispers, everyone else is tired. You're not special. Discipline learns to be selective about mirrors. Choose environments that reflect the standard you want. Choose people who do not normalize your lowest moments. Choose a culture that rewards small, steady movement. This is not callousness, it is stewardship. You steward your future by selecting the currents that carry you. And here's a paradox that will upset you. Sometimes you will outgrow people with kindness, not argument. You don't need to sever ties with cruelty. You just need to stop letting proximity define your limits. That alone will shift your options. Pause, gather momentum. There will be days when emotion throws a tantrum. The body will feel heavy. The thoughts will sound convincing. What you practice in those days matters. I want you to rehearse one sentence until it becomes reflex, not a mantra. Not a pep line, a pragmatic sentence. Do the smallest useful thing. Say it slowly, and then act on it. That sentence redirects the storm. It narrows the horizon to the next right move, and the next one after that. Minute by minute, your horizon rebuilds. Eventually, you will prefer the feeling of being in motion to the quick comfort of stopping. That preference becomes an identity. Softer, reflective. Identity is the real currency. You don't build discipline to get disciplined. You build discipline to become the kind of person who is worthy of long, unglamorous effort. And identity resists contradiction. Every small decision that aligns with your claim reinforces it. Every concession weakens it. So your loyalty is not to a single event, it's to the accumulation of consistent action. This is why the language matters again. You won't claim, I am disciplined as an act of vanity. You will claim it as an action plan. I am the kind of person who does their small things. Live into that line, beat, there is a final, quiet weapon most people never learn. Pre-commitment. Structure your day so that the path of least resistance is the path of progress. If you want to eat better, don't keep the snacks in the open. If you want to write, create a ritual that bypasses decision-making. The 1% engineers their environment. They reduce friction for good choices and increase friction for bad ones. This is not manipulation of others. This is realism with your future self. You can be kind and strategic at once, and then forgiveness. Discipline without forgiveness collapses under its own weight. You will fail, you will skip, you will cave. When you do, see it, name it, and respond with a small constructive step, not with self-flagellation. Not with grand promises that are unsustainable. Repair the ledger, repair with tiny actions that will resettle your identity, because where you return refines who you are. Music resolves, voice warms. This isn't glamorous, this isn't viral, it is faithful. It is how empires of effort are built. One stone, one morning, one tiny refusal. If you want the 1% life, begin by negotiating differently with yourself. When emotion calls, answer with curiosity. When curiosity reveals a hole, act with kindness and strategy. When resistance rises, perform the smallest useful thing. When you fall, repair quickly. Choose environments that lift, and practice pre-commitment like a religion. And above all, translate discipline into language that a human can love, because the point is not to become a machine, it is to become a loving steward of your future possibility. Discipline is how you show up for that person you intend to be. Emotion is the weather that will sometimes make the showing hard. Make a pact, show up anyway. Day by day, your life will rearrange itself. You will notice one morning you no longer have to fight the same fight in the same way. The voice of discipline grows louder because you fed it with small acts for so long. The voice of emotion grows quieter because the pattern has changed. That's not the end, it's the continuation. You continue because you are someone who continues, and that is the edge the 1% learn to cultivate. Not from fury, not from luck, but from 1,000 deliberate mornings. This is the discipline that outlives feeling. This is the practice that turns the invisible into the inevitable. Small actions, repeated daily, over long stretches of time. That's not motivational, that's mechanical, and it works whether you believe in it or not. That's why most people miss it. Because it's not exciting. There's no rush, no dopamine spike, no dramatic turning point, just quiet accumulation. While the world chases shortcuts, the 1% builds foundations. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. The 1% doesn't feel more confident than you. They just move without permission. They don't wait to feel ready. They don't wait to feel fearless. They don't wait to feel deserving. They understand that clarity comes after movement, not before it. Most people are stuck trying to think their way forward. The 1% acts their way into belief. That's why they look confident later, not because they were born different, but because they trained the muscle early. If you're listening to this and thinking, that doesn't sound special, good, that means it's available. The 1% isn't a club, it's a choice. Repeated longer than most people are willing to. Repeat it, and the uncomfortable truth, nothing is stopping you, not your background, not your resources, not your timing, just the daily decision to stop living reactively. And start living deliberately. This is where the separation begins, not at the finish line, not at the applause, but right here, in the way you think when no one is correcting you. This is the 1% mindset, and this is only the beginning. If this voice feels familiar, if it sounds like something you've been thinking, but never slowed down enough to say, stay here, subscribe to this channel, not as a favor, as a decision, because what you repeat shapes you, and what you listen to when you're alone quietly becomes your standard. Like the video, share it with someone who's fighting a battle they don't talk about, someone who needs to hear that staying disciplined when emotion is loud actually changes everything. Then come back, we're not finished yet.